Trigger warning. A woman was killed after her husband stabbed her repeatedly during a Bible study session at a relative's home in St. Paul, Minnesota. Let's get into it.
Begin with some disturbing new details in a deadly stabbing in St. Paul.
Court documents say a man killed his wife in front of a group at Bible study. Today, prosecutors charged Robert Castillo with the murder of Corrina Woodhull. As our Jonah Kaplan reports, Woodhull was known as a beacon of hope to those who knew her.
41-year-old Corrina Woodhull had overcome addiction and depression, but she could not survive domestic violence. According to court documents, Woodhull and her husband, Robert Castillo, were sitting together at a weekly Bible study. Witnesses told investigators the two did have marital problems, but it seemed they were getting along. Witnesses then described Castillo whispering something to Woodhull, then she shook her head. Castillo then pulled out a knife and stabbed her. Woodhull is survived by her 5 children, but she also leaves behind a community of recovering addicts who describe her as an inspiration and beacon of hope.
St. Paul police were dispatched to a home on the 1000 block of Maryland Avenue East around 9 p.m. Tuesday on reports of a stabbing. When officers arrived, they found a 41-year-old woman laying on the floor of the home, bleeding from her torso, chest, and arms. Nearby, several people were detaining Castillo, who was on the floor. One person told officers a knife laying on the armrest of a couch had been taken from Castillo. While being transported to jail, the defendant reportedly asked an officer, "Is she going to be okay?" According to a criminal complaint, investigators at the scene spoke with Castillo's sister, who was a resident of the home. She told them Castillo and the victim came over that evening for Bible study, sat together on a couch, and were acting like everything was normal. Then the defendant allegedly held the victim's hand, kissed her, and whispered something in her ear. At that point, the witness says the victim shook her head no, and Castillo responded by pulling his hunting knife and stabbing her an estimated 20 times. A group of family members jumped up and pulled the defendant off his wife and held him down until police arrived, the complaint stated. Other witnesses in the home told a similar version of events, also sharing that Castillo and the victim currently were not together as they were having marital problems. One witness told police the victim said, "Don't let me die," and said Castillo would have stabbed others in the home had he not been disarmed, according to the complaint. When questioned by investigators, the complaint states Castillo told them he and the victim had been legally married for a couple of years, and they lived together in Golden Valley until about a month before the stabbing. When asked what happened with the victim at the house, the defendant reportedly replied, "I don't want to discuss." The Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office found the victim had a stab wound to the left side of her chest that pierced her heart, along with additional sharp force injuries to her face, chest, and upper extremities. In the criminal complaint against Castillo, prosecutors say he has 8 prior felony convictions, including one for beating the mother of his child with a hammer and another for repeatedly stabbing a roommate. If convicted, Robert Castillo faces a maximum prison sentence of 40 years.
It's all about power and control.
Joe Shannon with Violence Free Minnesota says leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence.
We see this often in our homicides, that the victim of the homicide was attempting to leave or was in the process of leaving.
According to their records, Minnesota had 25 domestic violence-related homicides in 2021. They're still compiling the numbers for 2022, but so far this year, they've counted at least 7. And Shannon says nearly half of these homicides happened when the victim was trying to leave the relationship.
Because leaving the relationship is so dangerous, just telling them to leave is not the best option. They need the resources to do that.
Against All Odds Ministries is working on a project to raise money to support Woodhull's family, including her kids. Anyone interested in supporting that effort can contact that group for more details.
If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. It's a start. I'll see you in the comments, beautiful people. Rest in peace. Corrina Woodhull.